Auction Ohio podcast. I'm Chris Davis, your host. Welcome this week to a conversation probably a bit more oriented toward real estate agents. But if you're not a real estate agent, you're certainly going to enjoy some of the conversation and the banter back and forth. I want to welcome Bill Evans, Vice President of Real Estate at Auction Ohio. Bill, welcome to our podcast this week.
Thanks for having me.
Bill and I, kind of, I guess maybe a little bit of the introduction side. We go back a little ways.
We do.
We were both young, and neither one of us wore glasses.
Nope.
We were.
My belly was smaller.
Life was a little simpler back then, or at least it seemed to be.
Right.
But we met in a real estate office, and a little bit, almost not unlike Ray Daly in our meeting, because Ray was your trainer as well.
He was my trainer as well.
We talked about that a little bit, and in that process, we met each other on Copeland Mill Road.
Copeland Mill, upstairs,
Shared the same office.
We did. You got me in trouble.
Got you in trouble a little bit, but for the most part, we stayed out of trouble.
We did.
Right? But you were just starting in real estate, ambitious, moving forward, fast forward, and so kind of and I don't remember exactly when, but we met in 1988, and you had been in the business a couple of years prior to that.
86, so
And I had been in business a couple of years prior in Southern Ohio.
85.
And so right on the same track, pretty close.
Right.
And then you left there and went to RE/MAX, created that team concept. You left there and made your way to managing a larger size company.
I did.
So give us a little background about, or your, story from where that started and to how you got here.
Great point. So you're right. Started out very young, like you. We were selling, built a team at RE/MAX, ended up going to a larger local brokerage that's, was very large, it still is.
Yes.
And it kind of worked my way up through that. I actually started out as a recruiter, recruiting agents, and then ended up leaving there. When I left there, I was president of the company. And then, so interestingly, was always had my fingers in real estate of some form, fashion, other, whether it was private equity or construction or buying properties, whatever it was. And of course, we were sitting in a restaurant. My wife and I were sitting in a restaurant, right? And I heard this voice, and I said to my wife, I said, "That's Chris Davis." Well, Tammy didn't know who Chris Davis was. And I turned around, and sure enough, there you were. And I said hi to you, and you said, you looked at me because I had a full...
A bit unrecognizable, to be honest.
And that's probably about 7 years ago, right?
Yeah,
and we kind of
I think it has been.
Yeah, I think it has. And we kind of just stayed in touch and went to dinner, hung out a little bit. And then I got a call from you. You just had a corporate meeting. And you said, "Hey, you want to meet me in Powell?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So we went to Local Roots. And remember, we had a special visitor drop in on us.
Well, we've always had a few drop in on us.
Yeah. But we started, and you sort of, like you always do, what if? And I said, wow, and I was ready to reinvent myself again, which was really cool.
Right.
And so that's how I don't know how long it took from that conversation, but then, and really, you were painting that whole idea of the agent partnership program, right? In other words, you'd always worked with agents, but it wasn't really a formalized, I guess you'd call it a formalized program or process or whatever. I mean, you and Brian have been building the business and working with agents. It just wasn't a formalized setting.
Exactly. And I think where we were, I think in our business, seeing some opportunities that were there, in the bandwidth, as we always, deal with, what do you do well and do that well and don't spread yourself
exactly
thin, right? And we can get to that point where we try to be everything to everybody and we never go deep anywhere. We're shallow across the board. And so for us, we thought it was a mistake for us to try to also do everything that we were doing in our own book of business and then try to launch or push what we think is probably one of the best changes in our business model, and that is an agent-centric.
Right.
A buyer, working with an agent is a pretty normal process, and we've always embraced and always
Sure.
worked with agents in that model, but never really so much pushing that towards agents who are representing
Right.
sellers.
Well,
right?
and I always followed your career, because we kind of went different ways, and I followed your career as an auctioneer. But having been in being a real estate agent, there were definitely myths in my head, even though I knew you personally. Right. It was kind of like, well, and auctioneers and real estate agents, kind of historically have never really,
no love affair.
Yeah, no, it's almost like one of us isn't needed.
Right, exactly. So, unfortunately, and I think that became a symptom of, a little bit of selfishness. And probably on both
ways,
I
sure,
don't
absolutely.
Know if it's just in one camp or the other, but
absolutely.
Auctioneers felt like that they were going to garner the buyers, and if an agent had a buyer, their theory was, well, your buyer's coming, I don't need you.
Right, they're going to be there anyway. So
exactly.
Right.
And then on the other side of that conversation, agents would have properties that maybe were ideal for an auction process to benefit their seller, but because there was no shared compensation. And the agents felt like they had to hand that off to an agent, or to an auctioneer,
right.
who was going to take it. And
Correct.
There's a problem with that.
Absolutely, because, as an agent, that relationship is just as important as that commission. So even if you were paying me to take it, I was losing that relationship, because if you do a good job, and you do, right. Well, if they've got another property, or they're going to refer somebody, who are they going to refer you to? You, not me. So I'm now out.
Right.
So that was, and you'd seen that problem.
Right. So we look at this model that you are working, right? And so this agent partner model.
Correct.
And I guess there's benefits, some limitations, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes.
Right.
But tell us and tell our listeners, what are the other benefits in addition to managing the relationship? They're compensated. Right?
Absolutely.
And that's a whole different model.
Absolutely. And I just pulled statistics up, and I don't have last year's, but this year's statistics. 70% of the transactions or things auctions we've done year to date, 70% have involved a real estate agent, either as an agent partner, an agent that referred us the business, and I'll talk about that a little bit more, because agents can still refer the business. We still keep them in the relationship, but some of them just don't want to they don't want to be involved. And nothing wrong with that. So we have agent partners that stay the listing agent. We have people who want to refer the business. And then we have buyer brokers. We love agents, right? And so 70% of our transactions has an agent getting paid just year to date. So the advantages, though, I think very clearly advantages are, one, you now have another tool in your toolbox that you didn't have. We'll talk a little bit, I'm sure, about what makes the right kind of a property and so forth, but there's a lot of as-is ugly properties out there, and I'm going to pigeonhole for a second on the residential side, but those are houses that just aren't great just to put on the MLS in the way they are. Sometimes they take too long, or they don't get the money they should. Well, our platform really, really, really works extremely well for that. Now there's another tool in their toolbox that they didn't have. So one, they get compensated. They can stay involved in the transaction and get the credit, because you know what? I'm as an agent, I always wanted that credit, right? I wanted the unit, I want the credit, because in the MLS, it's in their name. I want to keep the relationship, right?
Right.
So we really can help them grow their business. Another tool, stay in the relationship, get paid. And we haven't really talked about this now, and we don't know, does this stay the way it is forever? But right now in our industry, very standard, is this thing called buyer premium, right? So as a seller, if you're the listing agent, your seller doesn't pay a commission.
Right.
That's on the buy side, right? And quite frankly, if you're a buyer broker, you just take that into consideration. It's just different. Will it always be that way? I don't know. Compensation models have changed. You kind of, yeah.
Sure. We talk about what the future is going to look like, and I think quite honestly, I think what we have represented well. I mean, our history has always been that we're going to participate with real estate agents.
Period.
We're going to change that conversation. We're going to be a bit of a disruptor in what has been the norm, because I think we're better together. And we use that tagline a lot. We're just literally better together. So what we do is we that team up concept, right?
Absolutely.
The agent with that seller and in that relationship with compensation that's equal, then is not driven to one direction or the other based on
Correct.
basic, the facts are not, we're in it to make a living. And so these agents are trying to manage how they represent their clients and, get the best return that they can. And there's nothing wrong with that. But in this model, it allows them to literally lay before a seller options available to the seller and be able to then promote something that in the past wouldn't have been in their toolbox. It wouldn't have been in their briefcase.
Correct.
And let the seller make the right decision, that decision that's right for them.
And when I came on board, and I spent 2 years, you kind of was great. You kind of just threw me out there and said, go get them, right? And I'm learning, I'm listening to everything you're saying, because it's different. It's just a different mentality, a thought process of how you do it. I come from being a real estate agent, and that's a thought process. Auction is different. So that partnership really works because it's the best of both worlds. That client is getting the agent and traditional, and they're getting the auction and everything that brings. But my point where I was going with that is, I got out there and I started to learn, wow, this is completely different, right? And so the amount of time it would take to learn all that, you've been doing this, 35, almost 40, well, all your life, but I mean, formally 85, right? You got your
85.
license in 85, right?
85.
Auctioneer's license.
Right.
And so if you think about that, the amount of years and knowledge and growth and honing the skills, and what's great is the agent doesn't need to leave their brokerage. Matter of fact, the brokers we work with, some of them were the broker, they were a little skeptical at the beginning because it's kind of odd and weird to do. Like we're taught as agents, you don't do co-brokerage, or you don't do two companies. That's, no, you or them, but it's not, just, I don't know, it's just kind of the way it was, right? But with this, once they do it, they're like, wow, that was simple.
I think, and I think I would just interject that I think what they're comfortable with in that relationship with us is that we're not a competitor.
Correct.
We're not their traditional competitor. Right. And so no matter what happens, we're always going to champion that agent. We're going to help them do what's right for their seller. And sometimes that's walking away. Sometimes
yes, I was going to talk about that. I agree.
Yeah, it's not always that auction's the only solution.
No.
And to our philosophy and our model is when it's right, and when it's not, it's not.
Absolutely. And you know who you are, and we've spent a lot of time on defining. We already knew who we were, but defining and putting it in writing and talking about who we are. And from the day one we started working together was, decision making is pretty simple because it's do the next right thing. You always just say do the right thing. So if do the next right thing is the answer, it's very simple. So when we're sitting with a client, with an agent, with a seller, and we know this probably isn't the right thing, it's very simple for us to say, you know what, I really think you should take this traditional route with your agent. So we're there to champion their agent, support their agent, build their agent up. It's not like, oh, you don't want to do that, you want to do this. No, it's a combined team effort. And we tell the agent, look, I don't think this is one that's the right, it's not the right property, the right seller, or the right terms for auction. So we turn down business that, other people probably wouldn't turn down, but because of that philosophy, we're better together, but do the next right thing. And not one deal is worth our reputation.
Not at all. And I think there's other benefits to those agents who are bringing, those sellers into a process that is right for the seller. You alluded to, challenging real estate. We laugh around here and now and then. We get some pretty good feedback on some. We have one lately that was feedback on a showing from an agent, said this property is so ugly, it's wonderful.
It's wonderful.
It's wonderful, right? Or then we had another one not long ago that said, this is not a diamond in the rough, it's still cold.
It's still cold.
It's got a ways to go. For it's ever going to get to where
In our world, ugly's beautiful.
It's beautiful, right? And if you think about all of life, there's some principles that follow through with not only personal lives, but with business.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes we look on the outside of real estate and we judge real estate no different than we might judge other folks, right? So function has no place in what a person's value is. And the appearance on the outside of real estate really should not be the judge of the value of the real estate, because as you see it, and it's challenging, right?
Right.
You coined this phrase, you brought this to the table, nothing I ever used before, but you use it, and I think it's a right analogy.
Did you steal it?
I stole it. And so when you can break the floor and pet the wall.
That's right, break the floor and pet the wall, right?
Picture, right?
70s, baby.
You talk about dating, that's dating.
Yeah, and you know what's so cool about that is, and we've got some really cool pictures of some houses that are just some, I mean, you know, you could have done the Brady Bunch in it, you know?
And so I think we fixed up to the Brady Bunch.
Well, you couldn't have moved right in.
They were the same, but bring up par a little bit.
But, you know, and as I started to learn what, you know, and you were teaching me is what was really cool is there is a lot more as is ugly property than there's perfect property. So if you think of it from an agent's perspective, I mean, I know I've done as a listing agent, you walk in a house and you're like, oh no, you don't want to say it, but you're like, oh boy, this is a dog, right? And not only that, you know, and this isn't bad, but it's like, these folks are not, they don't have the ability, maybe they're older, maybe they just financially don't have the ability. Nothing wrong with that. That's the way life is, right? My parents were that way, right? Are that way. And I love you if you're watching this, Mom. Well, they don't have technology. They're not watching it. So, but we're safe, right? But my point is, it's like, you know, if they were to sell their house, you coined it, and I stole yours too, but you know, your phrase, you go ahead and say it, because I'm not going to, but you know, they open that.
Well, you know, we have a lot of folks that don't move, right?
Right.
And we use this analogy a lot where the couple will stand at the top of the stairs and they'll open the door. Now, they've not been in that basement for 20 years,
right,
or 10 years, or 5 years.
Right.
And they look at each other, and one says, I ain't going down there. And the other one says, I ain't going down there, just die here. And so what happens is folks let real estate own them rather than they own the real estate. And so life then is lived around something that shouldn't own us. It shouldn't tell us what we're going to do tomorrow. And so I think what's really neat about sellers who are faced with, and let's be honest, embarrassment in some cases.
Absolutely.
Right? Trying to figure out, trying to make that house perfect so that it can sell. The truth is that the audience is broader. When you look at real estate that needs some help,
absolutely,
it's actually a better buyer base than for real estate that's perfect, that has a limited. Now, this market that we're in today, as we know, we've been here a while, and we're going to be here for a little while longer, we're convinced. And so there's plenty of buyers, but buyers who are okay to put some equity, some sweat equity into real estate, that like that kind of real estate because they want to redo the kitchens and the bathrooms themselves. They might want to add on and work in basement issues, whatever they want to do. You got buyers at the same time that are looking for cash flow. They're investors. They're buying it to keep. They're investing dollars to get a return, and the real estate just happens to be the vehicle instead of a stock or a bond or an annuity, right? So real estate, it's kind of interesting because
it's outperforming everything else. It always has.
It always has, and so we got a lot of buyers that say, you know what? I ride that roller coaster and I never know where I'm at, but real estate, and if you understand, and listeners, if you don't, we're happy to have this conversation, but the depreciation is kind of the unknown. It's the unmissed return that folks forget about. It is the magic to investment in real estate in a lot of cases. But you've got that buyer base, and then you've got the market today. How many people are out there that got into business in the past few years that all they do is flip real estate?
Flip real estate.
They find those opportunities and those properties, and they put their money into it.
And to quantify that, what's so cool, because, and this is what I keep saying about what you built, now I'm hoping to continue to build, is over all those years, you know, we've accumulated 125,000 plus, it changes every day, it grows every day, bidders. Those are people who keep coming back. You know, every week we put out an email, right?
Right.
And they open it, and I look at the heat map, and I see it and who it is, and then I look at how many people are the same people. But and we draw eyeballs from all.
You know how to do that?
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
You want me to show you?
I just want to.
Yeah.
No, I don't know.
You don't believe I know how to do
impressed.
it. Yeah. Yeah. Boy, there's some things. Yeah.
Okay.
We should stick on this topic.
Yeah. Let's go back to what you're talking about. I just for a moment I thought, hey.
And over 1 million people a month on our website. So if you think of the power of that. So let's switch back to the agent though. So that agent walks in that house that we were just describing, right? And the folks, because they're good-willed people, they say, we're going to clean it up and we're going to get this done and we're going to get that done. And then a month goes by, 3 months goes by, 6. And matter of fact, most experienced agents walk in and go, this is never going to happen.
Right.
And what do? Because they don't have necessarily options. They don't have a solution, right? So they're kind, they don't want to be mean to them, but they know this is never going to happen. With us, it's simple. Literally, take what you want, we'll handle the rest. And so, and what's happening is some of our top agent partners, they've figured it out. And now they know, they walk in and we consistently get business from them, right? Because other agents are like, I don't know, I just don't see. And it's like, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. You're stumbling over these constantly, these properties. And so, and it's not, like you said, it's not for everyone, but when you walk in, like, boop, the light bulb, doom, okay, I think this is an auction property, right? Mm-hmm. And we get those calls from, now we've got these agent partners and they call us. They say, hey, I think we got one. Right? And the more they work with us, the easier it gets from the standpoint, like they'll just call you directly or call, us and say, hey, here's the thing. They're ready for you to call them, boom, 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 and boom, away we go. So once we get that thing working with agents, it's smooth. And we can talk about what makes success and the law changes and so forth a little bit, because we can coach agents on how to be the most successful with it, because that's really important. I when I started doing this, and it's going on 3 years. That's just crazy. But
that's a long time.
It's not compared to how old we are, but it's a long time. But my point is like when I started it, like I thought everything's an auction property, right? Because I just, it's like when you buy it, right? Exactly, you did, and I'm like, I'm everything.
Scared me a time or two.
Yeah, well, I was for sure we should be doing perfect properties. This hot market, it's an auction anyway. You know what I'm saying? In other words, it's like everybody's getting multiple offers on everything. I said, everything's an auction property. Eh? Perfect properties, beautiful, well redone. Let's do that. That's not it, right? That's not it. That goes back to that conversation we're having about, we now tell somebody if they bring us that property, it's probably not, that's probably not the right property for an auction. Perfect real estate. In other words, everything's done. Now, it would depend on 3 things though, right? Right seller, right property, right terms. If there was a need,
if that seller
needed the cash more than they wanted the house, we probably are the right person.
It still could.
Right.
And as agents, and that's primarily who we're talking to today, understand that, markets have always changed. And when you've been in this business as long as we've been in this business, we've been through the cycles more than once or twice.
Yes.
And so the market that we work in and live in today is inevitably going to change. That's history.
That's right.
And so sometimes I think there's that, I don't need it now. Mm-hmm. I'm not worried about it now.
Right.
And then market changes. And again, we think that's sometime way out in the future. I think we're all in that same agreement about we sit uniquely here in Central Ohio.
We really do.
A wonderful location, a wonderful market, and
but we do business in a lot of other areas. Those 11 counties that make up that one Columbus type thing, and all the growth and intel and all that stuff. It's not going to change, right? And we probably aren't going to find a point in time where we'll see the foreclosures go up and all that kind of stuff, because people have enough equity they can sell it. You talked about they can sell their way out. But when we get outside of that, and we cover all of Ohio, right? We go from river to the lake to so we get out of that 11 county area, and it's different. It is different. In other words, the market is changing things. Interest rates are having an impact on it. times are slowing down. So that's one thing I wanted to also talk about. So the types of properties, right? Mm-hmm. Because as we cover, like I said, we cover the state, and markets are different. But agents and the agents that we're looking to, they know that. If they get into an area, they know that market, and they know what times are and so forth. And that's where we have to help both agents and sellers know right property, right seller, right terms, right? And we'll talk a little bit about terms, but let's talk first. No, you're the host.
No,
I forgot.
I think let's talk about terms. No, I mean let's hit that, and then we're gonna
types of property.
We're gonna steer this conversation a little bit to how agents, what their limitations are. But
yes.
Terms, to I guess tie that conversation in. The magic of the auction process is really simple. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you think about it, and it's not complicated. It's the seller that's going to sell their property to the one who'll pay the most in the shortest amount of time, and it's as is condition or with the least amount of problems and headaches. And that's the same goal that sellers have had for
always.
As long as sellers have been selling real estate. How do I sell it to the one who'll pay the most in the shortest amount of time with the least amount of headaches?
Right.
And so none of that's gonna change. And then when you look at value, and we counsel a lot of sellers. We sit in the same room with them, and we have to have a necessary conversation about what value is. But the truth is, as we sit in the room with them, and you could invite 5 appraisers and 5 real estate agents into the same room, and you could pass out a piece of paper. They could write their number on it, and none of them would match. And the reason for that is that there's no science to value of real estate. There's no science to it. And so we not being a participant, and by that what I mean is we're not buying. Right. It's not us who's buying real estate. So we're not engaged in the real determining value of that property because we're not engaged as a buyer in the process. We look at comps, what we call comps. We look at what has sold and we look at what's currently on the market, and all we can do is interpret those comps as we can as a human being. And that's flawed in essence at the end of the day. So value is this. It's what buyers are willing to pay. And as you sit in that room with a seller or an agent, then we have to step back and set those terms correctly so that everybody out there tells us what that real estate is really worth. And we do that as a function of setting a right reserve.
And I think a lot of people, well, when it was a live only auction, because we do live online, we do simulcast, which means live and online at the same time. A lot of times in the past when it was a live auction, the concern of a seller or even an agent was, are we going to attract enough people on that lawn in the morning or whenever we're doing it to drive that price up? Well, with the online, which we do about probably 95% or more of our real estate online, right? We definitely do live, and we combined it with simulcast, which is great for right kind of properties. But for the most part, that online, if you think about it, if we got 1 million people a month on our site and 125,000 registered bidders, and all the marketing that we then do, we're taking that property and we're exposing it not just locally, but really nationally and internationally, right? So to that point, that seller and that agent can be confident we're going to maximize. And I'll tell you, sometimes people think this is an arrogant statement, but I can almost tell you every single time we do an as-is property that we get more than what we would get if it was just MLS and agent driven. And that's not a dig at that. It's just saying, hey, everybody, you can stay in the game and you can bid as long as you want and as high as you want to go. And you taught me that that's the best appraisal you're ever going to get.
And it's transparent and it's open.
Right.
The frustrating thing, I think, in a market that even as strong as this one is, and that crosses all kinds of real estate, is that buyers are put in a position to make an offer without the knowledge of what the other offers are. And I think the value and the transparency, and really honestly, the only equal housing model that exists.
It's equal, fair.
Sellers don't discriminate against cash buyers or financed buyers. It doesn't really matter how that buyer is going to perform, and everyone knows what every other offer is. Those terms are disclosed and unchangeable, naturally.
Right.
So we want the buyers to be qualified. We don't really want buyers who are qualified bidding against folks who are not qualified.
That's right.
So we want to make sure that that playing field is level,
right,
and benefits everybody in the process.
And that's why we have the terms disclosed, and we tell you right here it's not contingent on this. And so
right.
it's you are an educated buyer, right? And it's not a scary process, because that was one of those things as an agent representing buyers at a auction. It was scary, and I wouldn't even admit it, but even after being in the business for so long, I was like, oh, I don't know how it works. And it's so simple, so transparent, and so easy. And there's really nothing to it. Instead, in our process, it's you can stay, all of you stay and bid as long as you want. That's an advantage to our seller, who we have the fiduciary responsibility to.
So we represent, and we could have a lot of conversations about all of those agencies and things. Just so our listeners know, agent specific listeners. We do lunch and learns and provide CE classes. And so depending on the size,
reach out to us. We'd love to do those.
I think it's good for you to know that we're a phone call away or an email away or a text away, and happy to engage in that. I'm going to address just for a few minutes, I guess, some law change.
Yeah, because we did have a law change.
So we've had a law change, House Bill 321 last year, that affected the auction industry, not just real estate, but personal property. And what it in essence did is it said that the auction law, the statute, now is in place, or online is now subject to the same laws as live. And prior to that, it was not. Prior to that, online auctions were not under any jurisdiction. So the Department of Ag that governs us as licensed auctioneers had no way to be able to monitor or enforce bad behavior. And we had a lot of it. And so we had not just real estate agents, but we had a lot of companies that were doing online auction business. Now, no matter what you call it, you can call it any other name. An auction's an auction, right? Competitive bid, open, transparent, that's an auction. And so it was pretty common to have some platforms that would allow agents to put their properties on and do an auction. And so agents were in the auction business. Some, were kind of forward thinking, and we don't fault them. That was available to them.
Absolutely, and the law allowed it.
But now that's changed, and so when we talk to agents today about the value of this program and the value of representing a seller and helping a seller in an auction process, we want to also make sure that we help them understand that there's some limitations to that. So real estate agents already know that an unlicensed employee of a real estate brokerage, a receptionist, or anybody else,
unlicensed assistant,
assistant cannot engage in the conversation and talk to clients about real estate, because you have to have a license to do that. And in the auction law now, that's applicable to online, real estate agents are not licensed auctioneers. And so that law change gave an opportunity for personal property to be sold under an auction firm license, but you cannot have a firm license and do real estate. That requires you have a full auctioneer's license. And so we want to make sure agents know that you can't hang the shingle. You can't have marketing material that has your name on it that says you're in the auction business. That
or you offer auction,
or that you offer auction services. So when we understand that right relationship, it is when you see the opportunity, when you're engaged with your seller, you can make that introduction.
And that's why we've even put together, we've put together pamphlets, right? So I've got one that is specific to the agent and talks to them about what we do in our partnership program. And then we've put together another one that is they can share with their seller to start the conversation as well. So not to interrupt you there, but those are, and so you can reach out to us, any of us, and we can get you these as well. And the other thing, as you were saying, I would really recommend agents have us in for a lunch and learn or a breakfast and learn or whatever in your office or your team, and come to our CE, or we'll host a CE for you as well. So
welcome to come to our facility.
We've got a nice training facility.
Business over 35 years with that next right thing. It is really belly to belly. It's really where we build those relationships, and we are that unique brand, right? We say local and trusted, but the trust doesn't come because we say we're trusted.
Right.
And I think it's important for our listeners to understand that you're not going to see us tooting our own horn. What we're going to do is that next right thing, and we're going to come along beside you as an agent, and we're going to help you make right decisions for your sellers. And if we're a part of that process, because then what happens is that they trust us the next time.
Yeah, we know that if we do the right thing,
Right.
it will pay off for us, and it does, and it has, and will continue to, because we're not going to compromise those situations. We're not going to compromise our values just for one piece of real estate.
Not.
We're going to be
not.
great partners with agents, and we're going to default to them, right? And I think that's where you've done it through your entire career, and we're doing it as a company, is developing that trust one relationship at a time.
Yeah.
We are better together.
We are better together. Well, we could talk for a long time.
We sure can.
If we do, we're gonna run out. Bella, our producer, is probably gonna put the
And I'm going to miss lunch.
book, and lunch is gonna be nice and all those things.
I'm just
before
kidding.
we I guess sign off, so to speak. Let's chat a little bit more about your family. Golf is evidently a big part of some of your children.
Yeah.
So, tell us about your kids.
Yeah. So interestingly, my wife and I met over golf, right?
Oh,
so
I don't know that I knew that.
yeah. So
is it golf? Okay.
Well, it's funny because I was with an old friend of mine, Art Travis, if you're watching, and we were up at Oak Haven Golf Course, and we were at a one of those realtor outings, So, and Tammy was a teacher. My wife, she taught, and in the summertime, she'd always work at a golf course, right? And so, Art noticed that I noticed Tammy, and he was just ribbing me like, "Oh, you're a big recruiter, and you can't even talk to a girl," and he was just ribbing me. Right? He probably don't even remember it. So I had to go in and ask her out. Right?
Well,
I didn't have a choice because he was.
Does Tammy know that he made you ask her?
Oh yeah, I confessed.
I
confessed. Yeah.
That it really wasn't on your own initiative. It was Art that was just messing with you.
Well, it worked out great. We've got 4 kids, but yeah, it worked out. But my kids, so yes. So we've got, Tammy and I have 4 children. Alex is our oldest. Mm-hmm. She graduated a year ago. She's a nurse, ICU, critical care burn nurse at Ohio State. Mm-hmm. She's awesome, and she doesn't golf, and that's my fault, but that's for another story. But she's not a golfer. I don't want anything to do with it. She'll go watch it. Right. And then we got 3 boys: Will, Ben, and Sam. Will, Ben, and Sam were really started out basketball players, but ended up changing over to golf. Tammy was a very good state champion basketball player and played in college and then coached and so forth. And our boys and Alex all played basketball. And then they decided to switch to golf. Right. Really cool. And I could brag about them forever. So I really need to wrap it up.
I think some state champions.
Well, Will and Ben won the state championship as a team. Mm-hmm. And then Sam won the state championship as an individual, and all 3 of them are collegiate golfers, and they all go to Cedarville University, and they play on the same golf team. If you follow me on Facebook, people are probably tired of it. They see it everywhere. You're probably tired of hearing about it, right? Facebook. Yeah, I know you don't.
I don't. And I get my story straight from you. I don't necessarily see it. But
yes, Will's a senior, graduates this year, and
getting married.
He is getting married. Yeah, June 24th. So wow, unbelievable! Everybody, yeah. Just bring lots of money and gifts, but
but no. I do have a wedding.
Oh yeah, we've got. Let's do a whole podcast on that one. That's a good moneymaker right there. So yeah.
Well, but service. It's a service.
Right, service. Yeah. So we live here in Worthington, have for a long time, and we're blessed and highly favored.
Yep.
So
as we all are. Well, thank you, Bill. Appreciate it.
Thank you, and thank you for having me on the team. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, it's a joy and a pleasure. We always do a tip of the week, and so I just wanted to take a couple of minutes and I think probably talk about for folks. And we alluded a little bit to this. So if you're interested in bidding on real estate, have your agent contact us, and we'll help ease into that process with some good conversation, kind of the big rocks. And so what I want you to know is that Registration on our site is easy. There's no credit card required. You're going to give us a little information. We certainly need to know that you're real. You're going to get an email with a bidder number, and then that bidder number you'll be able to use to then go back and log in and begin to bid on real estate. But the terms in that process are the important part to look at. And you're going to see almost all of our auctions have an acknowledgement of terms, not all, but most. And it's going to have those big rock conversations about when the closing is and if there's a deposit, what that deposit is. And that's going to give you at least kind of a foundation, for process to bid on real estate. It's not that complicated. And I think to your point, Bill, we talked about it earlier, I think folks sometimes just go, I don't know what that auction thing is. And so I think you miss out on some opportunities if you're afraid of something that is really, really easy to do. So tip of the week is it's not that hard to do. Loan disclosure. So this tip of the week is applicable and has an expiration date on it. What that means is that, I don't know if I've said this on the podcast ever before,
Wow.
but the expiration date is this. We're going to have a launch of our software. And so we own our own software. I don't know if our listeners know that, but it's proprietary. And so we built that. We kind of say that it's auction software built by auctioneers for auctioneers. And so we built it the way that we knew that it should be built. But we always have been improving that. And so we've been working nigh 2 years on a new launch. And some things are going to change a little bit for the better.
For the better. We
know that technology has given us some opportunity to do things a little bit better. So that process I told you about, while it's still always going to be easy, it might change a little bit as far as registration and login credentials and process, but it's still going to be with these.
Right. We do a little bit more paper, like for acknowledgement terms, things like that. That's all going to be clicks, clicks instead of that.
It's going to be electronic signatures.
But we're so excited about the new site because it's going to be so user friendly, both for agents and buyers and sellers, and we're excited to see that launch.
Yeah, it's been a long, hard road, and we're
birthing the baby there.
Birthing the baby one more time.
Yep.
So, appreciate you watching this week's podcast, and we invite you to like and to share and to comment. Give us your questions or concerns. We're always available. Contact us if you want to further the conversation. Thank you.